of Kittens and Broken Things. Chapter 64.
Garrus watched as Kara pulled every wire and monitor off of herself and jumped off the bed. When Dr. Chakwas opened her mouth to stop her, the glare from Kara was chilling. Then the smile when she had clear passage out of the medbay without being stopped was more so. Garrus was too stunned to do anything to try to stop her, and he decided he wanted to speak to Liara anyway.
Is she gonna hurt someone? Likely only if that someone gets in her way.
He sounded approving. Spirits. Angry Kara was likely his dream woman. More of his dream woman. Dr. Chakwas had gone to examine Liara, who was still shaking. Edie, let me know if Commander Shepard does anything homicidal.
Acknowledged.
Garrus asked Liara, what is going on? Liara took a long sip of water, put her hand over her forehead, and leaned on her knees with her elbows.
I'm not sure, but if I were to guess, what she saw is a bad thing.
The stunning redundancy of that statement went uncommented upon, though Russ tilted his head as though to ask sarcastically,
Really?
The beacon, whatever that thing is that she saw, is in there, in the data. From what I saw and felt, every single recorded dead Prothean was screaming at her all at once to avenge them, warning her that she and those she loved were all going to die the way they died, and showing her, making her feel exactly how. She thought it had only been a few seconds. She was trying to find the information she needed about the... She called it a snowball? Did she find the information?
Liara shook her head.
No, I don't think so. Just the replayed and concentrated emotional impact of the deaths of... She found some things, but not everything. Maybe if I left her, she could have...
So she's awake. She can walk. What does this mean, medically?
She's grieving the deaths of uncounted people she did not know about a day ago, other than as statistics. And now she's experiencing every single one of their deaths, as though they were herself or her friends, family, loved ones. Commanding officers experiencing the deaths of those under their command, mothers experiencing the deaths of their children as they touch, each one screaming at her that she's next if she doesn't... Doesn't what? They didn't know. Or some of them did know some of it. Everyone knew how they died, only a few seemed to know something about how it might be prevented. She was trying to find the prevention parts.
So there's a prevention part to find? Is that real or a delusion? Why are the Protheans all dead if they knew the answer to ending the Reapers? She's known about the Protheans, the extermination risk. She's managed all that. What's new in this information?
Her system is flooded to capacity with all the brain chemistry she can produce and more than she can process. I attempted to suppress adrenal and cortisol output, and I was unable to affect it.
How?
It appears that the Protheans were capable of relaying information by touch. The beacon is reflective of Prothean abilities, instantaneous insertion of all sensory information stored, an incredible amount of information. She cannot absorb it all. The human mind does not work that way. It is not about her being able to create her own memories of the experience. It is about access to too much unfiltered information she cannot retain all at once. There were record keepers among them, Protheans, who touched others in order to learn everything about them, record that information, preserve it. Those record keepers placed those visceral recordings, the subjective and personal histories of individual Protheans, the war, and Reapers, into what they called memory shards. And then those memory shards were channeled into the beacons. A real Prothean might be able to categorize it, organize it, access it in an orderly way, but she's got a human brain directly injected with every sensation, every thought, every experience of the dead and dying, the stories of those watching their loved ones die. The combined stories of what it was like to be a former Prothean that had been indoctrinated. She knows what it feels like. She can't not know what it feels like, what it means. To take all of those statistics and make them real people. It isn't pictures to her. It isn't like reading a book. It isn't facts. It is the direct experience of uncounted people. Everyone in this room has had reasons to be enraged, grieving, infuriated, and terrified. We all know it can counter exhaustion for days. She may be physically exhausted, but her body is churning out all the blood chemistry that happens during an emergency. It feels to her that these things are happening to her. As long as the playback continues, I'm cautious about attempting to get her to rest or do anything she does not wish to do at the moment, unless or until her body becomes capable of processing hunger or demanding sleep. It is possible she is the only person who is capable of determining what threat that construct holds. She is aware that perhaps the next moment of playback will give her what she needs if it continues. If she says that thing can kill us all, I believe her. She is aware she is the only source of this information, partly why she was so difficult to retrieve from her fugue state. If she was willing to remain in that state to discover the answers, she is fully aware that information is of more strategic value than her sleep cycle. It seems her only impaired judgment under the circumstances was her sense of time. She knows we're out of time as a resource. She cannot waste it. Perhaps we could extract the construct's purpose from the Geth sources building it.
Can we destroy it?
Should we destroy it? What if we need to use it ourselves?
Garrus asked Dr. Chakwas. Should we stop her?
If medical officers were able to override the commanders because they were angry, the military would not exist.
What if this counts as her being incapable of command?
I do not wish to be the one to inform her of such. If Liara's explanation holds, either she winds down on her own and exhausts herself, or this continues. In which case, she may lose consciousness again, and at that time I would reassess and hope her stores of certain chemical components are exhausted. A coma might be necessary. Once her body has sufficient rest in that state, I would revive her. I'm certain this has occurred to her, and if she requests this service, I would provide it. In this state, she will ultimately run out of energy. Exhaustion will overtake her as she loses her stores of chemical building blocks, and her body reasserts physical needs over emotional or intellectual needs as a matter of survival. As time progresses, I will have more medical options. If this, as I believe, has behaved like a near 20-hour night terror, attempting to get her to sleep may only further exhaust her, and she will lose time she might otherwise have with her intellect available to process the information she seeks. So you think she's of sound mind? Has she ever been, in your opinion? She's been calmer. As have you. If you were calm after being flooded with the visceral experience of the deaths of a race, facing the threat you wish to end, seeing the potential evidence of their destruction, would that be the reaction of a sound mind? She is going to try to look for the information she needs. That's why Ilos. What's on Ilos?
A Prothean AI. We spoke to it before Saren attacked the Citadel.
There have been archaeological teams all over Ilos. Nobody said anything about that.
She had nobody to report to from the time she stole the Normandy until the time she was restored to command. She didn't tell anybody anything about Ilos. Nobody knows we were there, just that the Normandy was near the Citadel.
So she wasn't near the Citadel?
No, we went to Ilos, found Saren there, and found out there's a Mass Effect relay from there directly to inside the Citadel. That's what Saren used to attack. We followed him and cleared a path. He led us straight back to the tower. So the irony is that if we'd been grounded to the Citadel and stayed that way, arguing with the Council, we'd have been closer to the action than we were after we stole the ship. I don't like to bring up that part. He didn't mention the Ilos codes. That was absolutely need to know, and not everyone in this room or potentially monitoring this conversation needed to know.
I was part of one of the archaeological teams that went to Ilos afterward. It's a lot easier when you're not under constant fire. The Mass Effect relay is visible from open sky. Now it's known to CSEC and the Council that the relay is active. It's treated mostly as a travel perk for the archaeologists who want to have a weekend off at the Citadel. There's an extended underground concealed passage to get to the relay, and along that passage is the door to the AI. The entrance to that passage is sealed in a way I did not divulge, but I was able to travel back up that passage myself from the relay. I couldn't find the door, and I knew where it was. The Expanse has defunct suspension pods, no viable Prothean life. I'm guessing that without Shepard there, that door won't open. Maybe the AI does sweeps for Prothean life forms, and with the beacon in her mind, she qualifies on some level as being Prothean. In her case, lots of Protheans. She was able to understand Prothean speech from other parts of the ruins when we were there. The name of the AI was Vigil, and unless you know exactly where that door is, which nobody else does, it's just like the rest of the passage. Meters of solid masonry holding inaccessible and dead Protheans whose stasis failed thousands of years ago. Breached containers whose contents turned to dust and blew away centuries ago. Nothing viable, no genetic material. It opened for her. And if I'm right, it will open only for her. We were along for the ride, so either Vigil is really gone, no more power at all, or it won't talk to us. But she might believe the door will open for her again. I think she'd make a door at this point.
So, we'd better not be walls. We got there in a long elevator ride. We have no idea, up, down, sideways, from the entry point. We need that elevator, and for it to have power.
If it still had power 50,000 years later, I doubt 3 years later would make that much of a difference. It was getting a trickle of power from somewhere, maybe backup solar, still functioning. What if the Mass Effect relay on Ilos could transport someone to the duplicate Citadel?
Garrus's brow plates rose high. She can't think to
Take a desperate action at a critical point in history that demands it?
Garrus closed his eyes tightly. Dr. Chakwas, in your medical opinion, is she emotionally imbalanced enough to attempt that?
Garrus, she did it once with a Mako only. She was not emotionally imbalanced at the time. She was treasonous, desperate, and lacking in support, except for those on this ship that chose to accompany her. Did you feel she was crazy as she drove toward that relay?
Beyond any doubt.
And that was only in pursuit of Saren, to save only the Citadel. This is a woman who has the mandate of Protheans she now knows personally to do what must be done. I doubt attempting to remove her from command will do anything productive. Edie is loyal to her, and we cannot afford a mutiny or to question her authority. There is no valid cause, and I would not participate. I also will not counsel her on the necessity of proper nutrition and sleep when external forces have made that impossible. Had I been able to stop this cascade of implanted memory and the subsequent reactive emotional state, I would have done so by now. What I can say is that Liara's description of the content of the beacon, Shepard's previous state upon encountering it, and her current reaction are all understandable. It does not indicate insanity. In her case, it would be difficult to define insanity. Unless something she decides to do doesn't work or gets her killed. So we can't tell her crazy from her inside scoop. What works for her really won't work for us if the key is the beacon. Unless we can find another beacon. Do you wish to volunteer to waste the time finding it and see if you can survive it, much less decipher its messages if she cannot?
Edie, please inform me if Commander Shepard falls over or starts to bleed from alarming places.
Acknowledged.
Where is she now?
Commander Shepard is in the gym, punching things.
Things? Or people?
Things.
I volunteer to be punched, if it comes to that. Think she could take you? A woman of her intelligence and willingness to complete her mission on her own terms should not be underestimated. You may think her unstable. I consider her to be under stress, which does not mean she loses her ability to strategize. She has survived, even thrived under considerable stress previously. The order to travel to Ilos is reasonable with the accounts given by Garrus and Liara. I would face a confrontation with her with more concern for myself than for her. I would do her no harm. Depending on how she views my potential intervention, she may not feel as constrained.
Don't sound too excited about it.
Maybe a tranq dart at range would be best. I would not authorize that. Dosage would be difficult to predict to counter her current state. An overdose could be fatal. An underdose would only make her angry. Angrier. Service on the Normandy is always a challenge. I would not suggest either Hemoris or Garrus approaching her if it came to arguing with her. Liara would be a possibility if all that is desired is an exchange of information. If she needs to be restrained, if her health is at genuine risk, I have sufficient agility to avoid her strikes. They could do severe harm to Turian nerve clusters or plate. If she could reach.
Russ, she's reasonable and sweet, until she isn't. Like I told you, you didn't see Rex's bad day.
So she fights dirty. She's smart, but come on, she can't take me one-on-one. Maybe I should do it.
Garrus answered with enough stress on the words to discourage Russ from any brinksmanship or curiosity. She fights to win. If that means dirty, she doesn't care. She can come up with dirty you haven't conceived until it happens. Garrus held up a finger and contacted Alenko on his Omnitool. Alenko, can you help me settle a bet?
Sure.
You were on Omega when Spectre Orbistan argued with Shepard about pushing deeper into the station?
Yeah?
So, in the spirit of bad days and knowing what happens, you think she could take Spectre Orbistan?
Oh, yeah. I was ready to back her up. She had that look. You know that look? Yeah, you know that look. She was eyeing his throat, but she talked him down. I was ready, but I knew she wouldn't need me.
Thanks. Garrus signed off and looked at Russ, who still looked unimpressed. She was looking at your throat, the nerve cluster there. She told me she thought you were going to try to kill her and she would have had a plan. Russ still looked unconvinced, if not bored. She took down Rex. She took down a Krogan mercenary 5 times her size. I saw her do it. He didn't see her until it was too late.
Fine. What did she do?
It was on Pharos. Rex did not want to go down into the Thorian's den. He wasn't the only one. I was scared to death of some monster plant that was capable of controlling the thoughts of the entire colony of humans. But I was a good Turian, and I just figured we were all going to die. It never occurred to me to argue. I figured she was next. I didn't know if the Thorian could control Turians or Krogan, but that just made it worse. She was going to be Thorian thralled, and she'd shoot us both. That's what I thought would happen. But she didn't blink about heading down, no hesitation. We're standing knee-deep in these dead creeper things. I won't get into it. Let's just say nasty in a bunch of ways. And there's a set of stairs down, and Rex did not want to go. She ordered him to follow her, and when he disagreed in Rex fashion, when he called her crazy, when he started walking back to the ship, he never saw her coming. Krogan battle armor has a massive cowl to protect their head and their hump, and that did not stop her. She climbed up his back and had her feet balanced on either side of his hips. She held a gas grenade up close to one of his eyes with her thumb on the half-released catch. She said her hand might slip if he didn't hold very still so she could keep her balance. She took her other hand's Omniblade attachment, extended it in front of his already threatened eyes, wedged it under his cowl, and cut down and through the hide and fat in his hump while he stood perfectly still. It didn't end there. She didn't just cut in. After the blade went in, she cut down, a long, slow, deep slice. She told him that he was going to lose his eyes and a large part of his redundant nervous system if he did not follow her and beat her kill count. Right now. She gave him about 5 seconds to consider before she started cutting again. He made some strangled noise that sounded close enough to yes for her, and she jumped off him. She marched down the stairs, not looking back. Told him not to waste any Metagel on his hump, that he'd have a scar to remember her by, and she wanted to see it still bleeding when we were done with the Thorian.
I treated his injuries. The depth of the injury was precisely short of damaging his spine. When I asked him the cause of the injury, he said it was from a crazy pyjak with a sharp stick. I assumed he meant her. And was it still bleeding? Oh, yes.
And he beat her kill count, but that might just be because he kept track and let him do it by one. Rex started looking at her like he'd found a Krogan goddess afterward. He loves that tiny, scary woman, and he's got a big scar that I swear he's made bigger every time I see him. He keeps it prominently displayed. I think he might have ripped it open and put some pigment in it to make it look nastier.
He wouldn't let me treat it much. He only let me debride the necrotic muck from the edges and stop the bleeding.
Sonar looked absolutely thrilled. Garrus said, "How about we give her some time?"
Sonar left the medbay with his own conclusions. He did not wish to give her time. He wished to speak to her and, if possible, determine a way to aid her. In the turmoil of the situation, he chose not to look too closely at his motivations, finding his insatiable curiosity about her, about the beacon, about what was going on in her mind, to be a likely primary reason. He did not have to present himself as such. He would be of service. He entered the gym quietly. She did not look up. She was moving through a combat form that was likely from her mother, striking at a dummy, precise and fast. He was reassured regarding questions of her sanity. She was, if not flawless, certainly not out of control or wild. In a relaxed parade rest, hands behind his back, a mock-up of human military form, he asked her, "Is there anything I can do to assist you?" She did not look up. "No. Get out. We are concerned for you." Her eyes raised to his. Her concentration faded. Her expression fell, and she looked down, and then back up at him, beseeching, in her way. She looked helpless. His heart hammered in response. "Okay. That's fair." She indicated one of the benches lining the wall of the gym and said, "Take a seat. I'll explain." Having been warned only a few minutes ago in the medbay, having himself expressed in her defense that she performed well under stress, he still did not suspect and did not hear her coming. Before he made it to the bench, there was a dual-pronged, sharp instrument pressed to the back of his neck, defining either side of his spine, that felt like cold metal, and the humming blade of her omnitool was at his throat. It was not merely at his throat, but slicing in enough to feel the sting and the ooze of blood. I do not have time for you. Every second you take from me is a second I am not spending finding information that I know is inside my head. I could help you find it. He believed he potentially could with the hypnotic aid of venom. He was not certain, however. He knew nothing about how the Prothean data was organized or accessed, and compelling her to tell or find the truth she did not know yet would not perhaps be of use. If Liara could not help her locate the information while she was navigating Kara's mind directly, it might in fact be a waste of time that would compel her to create an answer to give him to relieve the stress of compulsion. Both blades asserted themselves and more blood trickled faster, now down his throat and 2 trails down the back of his neck, the pressure and pain near his spine moving closer together and deeper. He believed the 2-pronged blades at the back of his neck could scissor closed, severing his spine if she so chose. No, you could not. Nobody is going near my head. No venom, no reverie, no drugs, no Asari, no talking. Pass that along for me and save me more wasted time. There are things in my head. Some things I have found, some I have not. This is a scavenger hunt for one person only. I am the only one with the clues. I am the only one that knows what I'm looking for. I am the only one that can see it when I find it. You want me to explain. As usual, I do not have time. You do what I ask you to do, or you have a bad day. Potentially your last. Nothing I have to say to you or to anybody will reassure them or help them understand. We're all going to die, and soon, unless I can decipher what I already know, what I have known for a few years and didn't know I knew. This is on me. If you don't like seeing me angry, then deal with your issues on the subject, because the alternative is me curled up into a ball until I die of despair. We're all out of time. You want me to eat. You want me to sleep. You want me to explain. I might eat if someone brings me food and leaves me alone. I might not if I feel the food might be tampered with, or if I'm just not hungry. I am not going to sleep because I might die while I'm sleeping in about 7 possible ways I can think of right now. This is it. Sudden death is coming for everyone unless I can stop it before we ever see a Reaper. And if I kill you right now, I might be doing you a favor. Say another word, and I will make sure your vocal cords do not work for the duration. Get out. Now. She was wrong. There was definitely something she could say or do that would reassure him. She had just done it. He wanted to tell her she was magnificent, and that he loved her. Instead, he did as she ordered him to do without looking back, hearing the rhythm of her strikes resume as the door closed behind him. Imagining that the weapon intended to kill him specifically was concealed somewhere on her body again, somewhere he had not detected it previously, that it had likely been there for months, that it was still warm from his blood, pressed to her skin, that if he turned around to look at her to express his admiration and sate his curiosity on that or any other subject, he'd be dead from some solution she had devised to kill him at range. He went to speak to Garrus.
How is she?
Senar pointed out the punctures and the slice to his throat and neck. True to form.
How did you get that?
I offered to help her.
You just couldn't resist.
No, I could not. She did not explain, but I believe her capable and sane. She is choosing to utilize her current state of induced anger as a more productive state of mind than despair. She said she might eat if someone brought her unadulterated food and left her alone. These marks are to emphasize that nobody is safe from her prohibition of not being interrupted. She will accept no venom, no reverie, no asari, no drugs. She will kill anybody that tries or succeeds. Garrus's face was appreciative, and Sinar asked him, "And what happened on your bad day?"
There's no way I'm telling you any more than the fact that mandibles twisted a certain way are extremely painful.